Hey, and welcome to Mosquito Bites Live. My name is Pablo Cabrera, and I'm the Communications Specialist at the San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District. I'm coming to you for Mosquito Bites Live on the first day of fall. Here in Southern California, summer may have ended, but fall is just getting started. Even though it's in the 90s here in Southern California, we're welcoming fall and all the different changes that come with that. We're also celebrating an exciting day today. It's National Invasive Aedes Awareness Day. Woohoo! Very exciting. National Invasive Aedes Awareness Day is an initiative to help bring education and awareness to Aedes mosquitoes. As you see here, different Aedes mosquitoes that are found here in not only in Southern California and in California, but across the nation as well. And really how Aedes mosquitoes have changed our way of living here in Southern California. And I see Rita mosquito, a very pesky Aedes mosquito, which we'll be able to talk about it a little bit later today, is joining us today. So again, my name is Pablo Cabrera, and this is Mosquito Bites Live for National Invasive Aedes Awareness Day. And I'm very excited to bring on our guest today, Greater LA. I see you requested. I'm going to go ahead and bring you on board. Have you joining us in just a few seconds. See if I will connect you guys. Hello.
Hi, Pablo.
Hi, Caroline. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us for Mosquito Bites Live today.
Oh, no, thank you for the invitation. And like I mentioned, I look forward to it. It is my first Instagram Live. So.
Well, welcome to the world of Instagram Live. I'm trying to adjust my screen here. But welcome to Mosquito Bites Live, and thanks again for joining us for National Invasive Aedes Awareness Day.
Yeah, I look forward to it. I know that we all love the Aedes mosquito, right?
We love to hate them. It's a love-hate relationship. So my name is Pablo Cabrera, and I'm joined by Caroline. I'm going to go ahead, Caroline, introduce yourself and where you're coming from.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, everybody. Like Pablo said, my name is Caroline Gongora. I am one of the community liaisons here at Greater Los Angeles County Vector Control District. As a community liaison, I really focus on community outreach and educating the public about mosquitoes, mosquito-borne diseases, and how they can prevent those mosquito bites.
That's very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today for Mosquito Bites Live. And I was mentioning earlier on the live, it's the first day of fall, and we're talking about invasive Aedes today. And so that brings me to my first question is, so what are Aedes mosquitoes? I think a lot of people hear a lot about Aedes mosquitoes, but they're still so new to us in Southern California. What do we need to, what makes them so different?
Yeah, so the Aedes mosquitoes, not to confuse them with the Aedes era, right? The Aedes mosquitoes, they are invasive to our area, just like you said. This mosquito is quite small. It's about the size of our pinky nail, so it's very, very small. It is black with white stripes. And what's so different about this mosquito compared to our native one is that it is a very aggressive daytime biter.
Exactly. And I really think a thing I'd like to point out here is actually have a few photos here I wanted to share. So this is Aedes albopictus. So this is going to be a little science lesson for a lot of people. So Aedes albopictus is one of the species that we, of the Aedes genus that we have here in Southern California. This is kind of the one that we've seen more often and was actually first identified in our district in 2011 in the city of El Monte, which I don't know if that's something El Monte wants to be proud of, but they were first identified there in 2011 by one of our vector control specialists, Mark. And after that, we have now identified Aedes nodoscriptus, and you can see the difference there is, I'll start to point them out, is their abdomen there is how you can identify the different species of Aedes mosquitoes. So this is nodoscriptus. It's another Aedes species that has been identified here in Southern California. This one is more prevalent to our fur babies, our four-legged friends, because they can transmit heartworm to dogs or to our pets. And
Nobody's
then the other
immune,
one,
right, Pablo?
Go ahead.
Nobody's immune to these mosquito bites.
Exactly. Not even our dogs can hide from mosquito bites. And then lastly is Aedes aegypti. And this is another one or depending how you say it, Egypti, Egypti. I've heard different pronunciations, but they're the same. And again, you can see the difference in their abdomen there. So this is another predominant Aedes species that we have found here in Southern California. So all three of these, if I can show them all at once, have been identified here in Southern California. But they are all, like you mentioned, daytime biters. They are far more aggressive than our common Culex mosquitoes. They're the brown-looking mosquitoes that we're kind of accustomed to here in Southern California. And like you mentioned, they're biting us during the day, and they've been nicknamed ankle biters. People call them ankle biters because they feel like they're attacked by these mosquitoes. I don't know if you've had any of your own horror stories of getting attacked by Aedes mosquitoes.
I do, unfortunately, I do. I had a presentation last night, and I was telling some of the residents that not too long ago, I actually went to a restaurant to eat lunch with my friends, and as I was eating, I noticed that my leg was getting kind of itchy. And then I was scratching, and then it got even more itchy, and then I was like, that's quite odd. And I looked down, and then I see an Aedes mosquito flying, and then I think the vector control in me, I really wanted to catch it, but it flew away. But after I saw my leg, I noticed that I had 4 bites, and because it was so itchy, it actually turned into a very large well. So in that 10-minute time span, I got bit 4 times. So that was very unlucky.
Exactly. And I think that's a very, like you said, that's a vector control person inside you. I find myself doing the same thing. I have found Aedes mosquitoes in my room. I unfortunately had a torn screen that I have now fixed, but they were coming in that way. And I would see them while I was working from home. And I wanted to more catch them and see if I could identify what Aedes species it was before I would kill it. I was probably doing myself more work than anything else. But again, that's the inner person in you. But just like you described, that's what a lot of residents are describing. That they feel like they're attacked by these mosquitoes. They are, like we mentioned, far more aggressive than our common mosquito. And those are different things that we're learning to adapt with the different behavior of these mosquitoes.
Yeah. And something to add really quick, Pablo, these mosquitoes, they do go indoors, which is different from our native mosquito, kind of like what we just did, right? We've seen them in restaurants, we've seen them inside our home. But even last year too, even though a lot of us were working from home, we would still use our vehicles to drive to the grocery store and whatnot. But I remember I saw 2 mosquitoes in my own vehicle. So these mosquitoes, they are really small and they can really get anywhere.
Exactly. And you touch on really good points there. So once again, my name is Pablo, and I'm joined by Caroline from Greater Los Angeles Mosquito and Vector Control District. And we're talking about probably the mosquito we all love to hate, which are the Aedes mosquitoes. We just talked about, what makes them so different and their behavior, and they are far more aggressive than our common mosquitoes. And another point, not only are they biting, but Caroline, so what's the big deal about Aedes mosquitoes?
Yes, so aside from them being very aggressive daytime biters, these mosquitoes bite multiple times, especially in our lower extremities, like our legs and ankles. But aside from their biting behavior, they can also spread more diseases such as Zika, dengue, chikungunya, and kind of like what you mentioned before in the beginning of the stream, even canine heartworm to our pets. So this mosquito can transmit more diseases compared to our native mosquito.
Exactly. And we're getting a comment there. When are the mosquitoes leaving? Unfortunately, in Southern California, I think that's the hard part. It's the first day of fall, and we're in 90-degree weather. So the population of mosquitoes, we live with mosquitoes all year round. That's, I think, the give and take living with the type of weather that we have here in Southern California. And Aedes mosquitoes are far more aggressive than our common mosquitoes. And just like you mentioned, we don't have, thankfully, we don't have any of those diseases here in the United States yet. But we are more concerned about people who are traveling to other countries and then returning back. If they come back sick, for example, with a dengue or chikungunya, they then get bitten by an Aedes mosquito locally here at home, and then that mosquito could potentially transmit that disease to somebody who has not traveled and get them, my sign's falling, get them injured, get them infected with that disease. And that's something that we're definitely monitoring and more concerned about when it comes to these Aedes mosquitoes.
Yeah, and something to add too, Pablo, is that, this mosquito has been able to thrive in our areas, right, in LA County, because it is an urban mosquito. So, to answer that question, when are they leaving? I don't think anytime soon, just because they have adapted to our urban environment. And they do love those residential properties with all that standing water, even though it may be small or large, but a lot of homes do have that standing water, which attracts those mosquitoes.
That's very important. And you actually touched on another really great point. These are urban mosquitoes. They prefer to bite humans more than any other animal out there. Just because, and then because we're also more urbanized, we live in dense populations, and LA County, as I'm sure you're well aware of, has a very high population of people living in many different areas. So it is a different mosquito that we're dealing with, and they are definitely thriving in our population. So just being aware of how these mosquitoes behave and what they're more attracted to in dense populations is one big thing that we're monitoring. But again, thankfully, we don't have any of those viruses that you mentioned here in the United States yet. But again, just making sure that it's another tip if you're traveling, using mosquito repellent when you're out and about, and then returning, and if you return home, continuing to use that repellent so you don't get bit by any Aedes mosquitoes once you come back home.
Yeah, I agree too. I think insect repellent is the most effective way to prevent those mosquito bites. I wish if I knew that I was going to get bit at that restaurant, I would have worn insect repellent. But I think, we slowly have to start changing our behavior and lifestyle, because these mosquitoes are here to stay. So even if we are just going out for a walk, or we're just going to sit in our patio, or even just go out, to a restaurant, it's always important to remember that mosquitoes are out there. And especially with this Aedes mosquito, they're just so aggressive that they will be biting us out there.
Exactly. So once again, my name is Pablo, and I'm joined by Caroline from Greater Los Angeles Mosquito and Vector Control District, and we're talking about Aedes mosquitoes. We touched on what makes these mosquitoes so different. They're small, black and white, more aggressive mosquitoes. And I saw that Mark was tuning in. He's actually our vector control specialist who first identified Aedes mosquitoes in 2011. So he's a bit of a local celebrity when it comes to the Aedes mosquitoes. And again, so we touched on what makes them so different. What is the big deal about Aedes mosquitoes? They are able to transmit different viruses to us, not only to us, but also to our four-legged friends, canine heartworm. And then my third question, Caroline, is we are two different vector control districts that are serving Los Angeles County. What are we doing as vector control districts to help prevent or protect residents from Aedes mosquitoes, and what can residents do?
Yeah, so that's a really good thing. So here in Greater LA, what we do is that we monitor public sources. So that includes rivers, channels, street gutters. But what we also do is that we monitor and inspect residential properties, and we look for sources that may hold standing water right now or in the future. So we really try to focus on eliminating those potential mosquito breeding sources. And aside from that, we also focus on surveillance. So we do monitor mosquitoes, the abundance, and also just those mosquito-borne diseases.
Definitely. And just to go off on that, here at the San Gabriel Valley Mosquito and Vector Control District, we are providing the same thing to our residents in the San Gabriel Valley by continuing monitoring for diseases. We have our traps set out all over the district, constantly monitoring for the different diseases that are out there. And we're always on standby for any potentially local outbreak. We work very closely with LA County Department of Public Health that gives us all that information that we need if there is any local outbreaks, or even if there's travel associated cases. That was something that was very big during the Zika outbreak that we were closely working with all the other vector control districts, as well as our public health agencies, and making sure that we are protecting ourselves and residents that are traveling if they are coming back with any diseases, making sure that they are protecting themselves to make sure that Aedes mosquitoes don't bite them, and then potentially biting somebody who has not traveled. Mm-hmm. And the other thing too that we're doing is minimizing the threat of the disease by monitoring for them in the area, identifying the different Aedes mosquitoes that are out there. I know our vector control technicians in our surveillance department are identifying Aedes mosquitoes, which ones are here, which ones are not. So that's another big thing. And again, reminding residents to use mosquito repellent when they're out and about. I'm seeing a lot of comments of people so frustrated, and I 100% agree with that. You know, you feel like you can't even go outside and you're attacked by these mosquitoes. I feel the same way. I've put in, and it's a matter of, like you mentioned before, Caroline, changing our behavior and knowing that they are more aggressive, that they are biting during the day. So any of our daily habits, I now carry mosquito repellent wherever I go, and especially, you know, now with restaurants being outside more and being in open doors more, I'm making sure that I'm using mosquito repellent before I go out to eat or I go sit anywhere at anybody else's patio or anything, because I went to a cousin's house a few years ago and I was just attacked by mosquito bites, and I said, never again am I going to let that happen. So again, making sure we're using mosquito repellent as part of our daily activity before we step outside for anything that we're doing.
Yeah, I think it's really important for residents to know, you know, in your district and my district and just across LA County that they are not alone. A lot of people are experiencing these bites. These mosquitoes, you know, they do travel from backyard to backyard, patio to patio. Even apartment complexes too, right? Balconies to balconies. These Aedes mosquitoes, they don't fly far from their water source. So in case, you know, we do have standing water, they may be coming from our backyard, but if we don't have any standing water, then that may be also one of our neighbors from the side, from the back, may have some standing water that is attracting mosquitoes to that area.
Exactly. That was something that I actually noticed because I once a week, whenever I'm going to throw out the trash at my house, I do a quick scan of my yard, and I sometimes have had a bucket or a little source left out, and I eliminate that water source. But I was noticing a lot of Aedes activity in my yard. We would just be sitting outside, and I would constantly see them flying around. Where now we've gotten used to the aspect of having mosquito repellent, you know, just by the door, and we're applying it before we sit outside or know that we're going to be outside. And the other big change that I did was also removing the dense vegetation in my yard. I definitely had a little corner that had a lot of dead leaves and big bushes, and was creating a microclimate. And that was really where I was seeing a lot of the mosquitoes kind of hanging out, because they can't regulate their body temperature, so they're looking for those cool areas to hang out in. So I really cleaned up that area and created a lot of airflow there, and I noticed a huge difference in removing in any mosquito activity in my yard. I still do get them every so often, but I noticed a big difference or a decline in mosquitoes in my yard for that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I know that we had somebody comment about mosquitoes and the shade. Even if we don't have standing water in our home, just like Pablo mentioned, mosquitoes, you know, they can't regulate their body temperature. So they're a little bit like us, right? When it gets too hot, we always seek out the shade. So that's why sometimes you see them in the corner, or maybe under your canopy, or near your fruit trees or any shrubs. That's because they're really seeking out that shade, especially when it's really hot outside.
Exactly. So once again, my name is Pablo, and I'm joined by Caroline. We're talking about Aedes mosquitoes. We're getting a lot of great questions, and we're definitely seeing exactly what a lot of our residents have expressed to us a lot, that they feel like they can't be outside without being attacked by these mosquitoes. And like we mentioned earlier in our first question is, Aedes mosquitoes, they're small black and white mosquitoes. They're far more aggressive than our common mosquitoes. And like Caroline mentioned as well, they will actually also follow you indoors. So if you have rooted plants or lucky bamboo indoors, that's a big thing to watch because the mosquitoes will find those sources inside your home. And if you have torn window screens or they're not properly fitted, they will fly through there, and they will try to get their blood meal from you, because they do prefer humans more than anything else.
Yeah.
Second thing that we reviewed are the different viruses that these mosquitoes can transmit. Thankfully, none of those viruses are here currently present in the United States. They're more that, like I saw a comment earlier from Mary Joy, people are traveling again. So if you're traveling to other countries, making sure that you're using mosquito repellent so you don't get sick out there with dengue, Zika, chikungunya, and then coming back and then potentially having a local mosquito bite you, and then that local mosquito transmitting that virus to somebody who has not traveled. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we're really concerned about these mosquitoes and monitoring them here in our districts. And then the last thing that we reviewed was, what are we doing as vector control districts? We're providing surveillance and constantly monitoring for any viruses and the different species that we find here in Southern California, because that is how we first identified them in the first place, that we were doing our normal surveillance, and a few years back they started noticing these other mosquitoes start to populate. So these Aedes mosquitoes are here. And also what residents can do is making sure that they're eliminating stagnant water or removing the dense vegetation in their yards, really removing the areas that mosquitoes are looking for, so that they can populate and they can be in our yards and whatnot.
Yeah, something to add really quick, Pablo. I saw a comment right here that they compared mosquitoes with vampires, and that's definitely true, right? Just a quick fun fact, only the female mosquito bites us. That's because she uses the protein in our blood to make her eggs. So just a quick little fun fact. And then I also noticed another comment about a resident using fans. So that's something that we do recommend for our residents if they are seeing a lot of mosquitoes or they're experiencing mosquito bites. If they like to be outdoors or maybe they're getting bit during the nighttime, we do recommend that you have a ceiling fan, or if not, a stand-up fan pointed towards you. That way it makes it harder for mosquitoes to bite because they're not good flyers.
Right. And I saw another comment too about the citronella candles. And that's another common misconception when it comes to mosquitoes. While the citronella candles have a great intention, I think it's that idea that it's going to create this invisible force field around us and protect us from these mosquitoes. While I really wish that were true, unfortunately, that's not exactly how it works. You would literally have to stand underneath the candle to provide you much protection. And then the last part is, if there's any wind or if there's a slight breeze, that's going to move whatever the citronella is burning, and then that will move whatever protection that was providing you at all. So the citronella candles aren't very effective in that sense. The best thing is to physically have something on your skin and using mosquito repellent. And I know Greater LA and San Gabriel Valley, we both have all that information on our websites.
Yes.
So please visit our websites for all you need to know about mosquito repellent and using effective mosquito repellent to protect yourself from any mosquito bites, especially the bites from these Aedes mosquitoes.
Especially those itchy bites.
Exactly, yes. And that brings me to my final question, Caroline, which is, this is a fun question, and I ask this all my guests that join us for Mosquito Bites Live, is, if you were a mosquito, what would your name be?
Oh, I know it's a fun question, but it was so difficult. You try to be creative and really fun with it. But what I came up with is Aedes Carolinus. So it has a little bit of an ode to my name, and it sounds a little bit similar to the other Aedes names.
I really, really like that. That's very, very clever. Well, thank you so much, Caroline, for joining us on this very important topic of Aedes mosquitoes on not only the first day of fall, but also on National Invasive Aedes Awareness Day. And just by the number of comments that we've been receiving from residents here on this live alone, Aedes mosquitoes have definitely changed our way of life here in Southern California. They're far more aggressive. They're these small black and white mosquitoes, and I will show you the Aedes nodoscriptus, which is one of the species here in Southern California. The Aedes mosquitoes have definitely changed our way of life here in Southern California, but we are definitely encouraging residents to remove any stagnant water, to protect themselves, and using effective mosquito repellent. And we also went over the different viruses that these mosquitoes can potentially transmit to us. Thankfully, those viruses are not here in Southern California yet, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. So we're constantly monitoring for those viruses and those diseases at our districts, and making sure that we are keeping an eye on those different mosquitoes in our areas. With that, Caroline, do you have any last words that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, so I know that we went over a lot of information about the Aedes mosquito, but what's really important to remember is that mosquitoes need standing water, also known as stagnant water. So if you can just eliminate that from your home, it really will help reduce mosquitoes from your property, both indoors and outdoors. And then to prevent the mosquito bites, just remember to use insect repellent, CDC recommended, to use a fan if you are getting bit outdoors or inside as well. Those two are the most effective ways to prevent the mosquito bites.
Those are really, really good tips. And again, we highly encourage all of our residents, and for those of you who are tuning in, to visit our websites on all the information that you need when it comes to mosquito repellent, and then just learning more about these different Aedes mosquitoes. Because like we've mentioned, they are very different. They are far more aggressive. And I see in the comment, the best to call vector control. We have all our contact information there as well if you want to submit a tip for any potential mosquito sources that you might identify in your neighborhoods. And we're happy to help you because that's what we're here for as vector control, to protect our residents from vector-borne diseases, and also providing the resources to help them with. So once again, my name is Pablo, and I was joined by Caroline from Greater Los Angeles Mosquito and Vector Control District, and we had a really great conversation about Aedes mosquitoes. So until the next Mosquito Bites Live, I will see you in the next one. And Caroline, have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pablo. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for everybody who tuned in.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.